Hello and welcome everyone to the Hope and Optimism podcast, where we highlight the people and ideas empowering international students to thrive. My name is Kwan Segal. I'm the founder of ICAway, and today I'm calling from my home in Chicago. And I'm here with two amazing co-hosts, Betsy and Dania. Betsy, where are you calling from today?
From St. Louis, Missouri.
Wonderful. What's the weather like today?
But I think it's going to get sunnier later today.
I really hope so too, because we are in springtime and I need some warmth right now with the sun. And thank you for being here with me, Betsy. You're the inspiration of this podcast, as we shared with our audience before in the pilot episode. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And Dania, what about you? How's everything on campus?
Hi, yeah, things are going good. I'm so glad that now we have finally spring coming up because I'm in Nebraska and the wind and the weather in Nebraska is so cold for me as an international student. So, yeah, we are excited for this weather. And then also a lot of things going on because it's already April and the semester is going to end soon. So, it's a lot of work and a lot of studies going on campus. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yes, I admire you guys so much, how you balance work, life, academic requirements, and the new culture in the US, and also everything that is going on right now. So we would love you to represent the international student population and share with us all the challenges that you guys are facing and the questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me in here.
Wonderful. I would love to discuss a little bit about the topic. I know the theme of this podcast is about hope and optimism. And one thing for international students and colleges and universities, student retention is really important. So today's episode is all about international student retention and the importance of creating a true sense of belonging. Even me, I'm a mature, a professional from another country coming here to the US. Sense of belonging also matters to me. So this is not just a buzzword. It's the foundation for success and key to student retention. Bessie, I'm so thrilled that we kick off this first episode together and we have our first guest.
Yes.
Can you please share with us who we'll be hearing from today,
Yes.
please?
Very exciting today that joining us is someone who's doing very powerful work in this space. Dylan Rust, who's the Director of International Student Retention and Inclusion at Northern Arizona University. When I looked at the website, I saw the wonderful international house and international pavilion that you have there, which looks so welcoming. Dylan, we're so thrilled to have you here. Could you start by sharing a bit about yourself and what brought you to do this important work?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. And for me, my story is, I'm an alumnus of NAU and I was working in NAU and campus living in our on-campus housing for a while. And I was somebody who got to work in multiple communities around campus, including international housing communities, working with international students, or especially family communities where we had a lot of international families studying at the university. And as I was finishing up my doctorate, I was looking at other opportunities, and something that was coming up at NAU was the creation of an international house community through the NAU Center for International Education. And so I was interested, and I kind of jumped ship from the housing realm into the international education realm. And so I started off as the program director of the NAU International House. I'm the only director that there's ever been of the community. And then since then, I've kind of grown in my role where I'm not just looking at the International House, but I'm looking at international student retention, looking at making sure that all of our international students at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona, are being welcomed and included in the campus environment, and that we're really supporting these students the best that we can. And it's highly rewarding work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dylan. And I used to partner with you to launch like trainer program for your advisors across campus. So such
Mhm.
an honor to be part of your journey to create a strong foundation of international student and international education at NAU.
Mhm.
Yes, and when it comes to this topic, this is the highlight of today's episode: how belonging drives student success and what inclusion looks like in
Mhm.
practice. It seems to be a big word, and this year we know is also kind of the dilemma to talk about inclusion right now, but I'm sure that we can still bring it to practice. So from here, I would like to pass over to Bessie to help us get started, please.
Yes, belonging, inclusion, those are words that truly do give hope
Mhm.
to individuals. And I think it gives an optimistic view that we want people to feel welcome, sometimes in a world that doesn't always feel so welcoming. That's why it's really important that we talk about why that optimism matters right now when times are uncertain, and how those international students and all of us who have been supporting international students give that sense of optimism for the longer term future. Dylan, as you're looking at all these uncertainties, these bumps that are happening with visas, funding, programs that are being changed, the global world, the local world, how are you seeing this impact the international students and their own sense of hope and belonging? And then we can talk about how that translates to those who serve them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having conversations with students right now, and it is absolutely taking a hit, on their sense of hope
Yeah.
and belonging. And so, what I'm seeing with students is, some of the changes that they're making to keep focus on what their goals are. And so, one of the things that they're focusing on is controlling what they can. So, they know that not everything that's happening is within their control. And so they are being vigilant about things that are going on and paying attention to things. But they're also sharing their experience with other students. And that I think is really key, where they're not just having any sort of anxieties or fears on an island. They're sharing these things in a community. People are kind of banding together, sharing experiences, sharing news with each other, and so then hopefully sharing some resources so that they are being communal in this space. But they are doing some changes to their behaviors. I think a lot of students aren't going to be traveling home over the summer like they
Yeah.
might have in previous
Yeah.
times. I think that they are probably going to be reducing their social media presence in a way. And so I
Yeah.
hope that that doesn't reduce their connection with other students and people, but that is absolutely something that I'm seeing.
Yeah, Dania, do you have a thought about this question about the optimism?
I have some thoughts that I want to share, but I really want to comment on Dylan's response to how international students are reacting or responding to all this chaos. I was planning to go to Pakistan this summer, and I'm also on Fulbright scholarship program. And this is for the first time that happened in the history of Fulbright that our stipend got stuck for 1 month. This never happened in the history of Fulbright. So, and also, it's my third year here in United States, and I have not gone back to Pakistan since 2 years now. So it is such an uncertain time for me personally, or many other students, because this is the time when we have to book our flights and everything, and we don't know what to do. And it is really impacting our emotional or mental health, and also it is impacting our studies too. So yeah, he's very right. And I also agree with this fact of how important it is to not get distracted by this and keep our focus on our studies or even short term goals, by keeping in mind that things would get better after maybe like 1, 2, or 3 years. So I guess just having that sense of optimism in us would keep us moving a little bit forward, because otherwise things are going to be really difficult for us to survive and thrive here, considering that we have a lot of workload and we have to meet a lot of deadlines and a lot of milestones in our graduate program. So I guess optimism, hope, resilience are the important tools that we can use. They are the important tools in our toolkit box, in our personalities, in our lives, that we can use at this time to thrive.
And Dylan, I want to build on your thought that the students are often supporting each other in a communal way, but do you see them also looking to those of you that are in leadership, in a sense, for some of that guidance and support and hope and optimism, or do you see them more turning to each other? Or is there a role that leaders like you can play?
I think that you bring up an excellent point, because to me, I think it's what's important is that students seek both. So let me kind of give some context here. We do have some students that when some of this news is coming in, they'll go to our International Student and Scholar Services office and say, is there going to be an impact on my visa? What's going on? How is this going to affect me? What should I do? Which is great. We want as much communication as possible with students. So there's one aspect to that. But then we also know, working with students, that sometimes students will have lots of questions, but just like they might have questions, but not always raise their hand in class, we also have students who will have questions, but might not want to take the time out or go have a meeting and talk with staff about these things. So what we've done is actually just earlier this week, we hosted 2 catered lunches on campus for all international students who are welcome to come. And they come, they get a free lunch, they meet with their peers, but we also have CIE, Center for International Education staff, around at all the tables. This
That's
is
a
the
great
second
idea.
time this semester we've done this. And we just have this open dialogue about, hey, is there anything you want to know? Do you have any questions about anything? What's going on with you? Do you want to talk? And just have a natural discussion. And sometimes these more serious kind of discussions can come up naturally, where a student might not have come in to ask, but they will ask in that scenario. And other times that's not what they need right now, but they do enjoy having that connection with staff to know, like, hey, we are here for you. We are supporting you. We want to see you in person. It is this reminder, with that kind of optimism as well, that you have this support too.
I think that's
Yeah.
fabulous.
We want them to have both.
Well, food brings people together, and food always brings students out and together, which is one thing because it's communal and that's a good atmosphere. But what I also really like is that you're building trust. And sometimes now that there's a concern with putting things in writing, asking questions in person, people can truly ask because it's not going to be in an email or a text. And they can ask something that's really in their heart and in their mind and their heart about what is on their thoughts. And so I think that's a great suggestion.
Yes, and we welcome that.
Yeah, I think that's a great best practice that I hope others can learn from or suggest to their own communities to do something like that. Let's shift to talk a little bit about the changing landscape of global talent, which is something that I've been very involved in St. Louis because it's so important for our community that we keep the best and the brightest talent that comes to our universities, and how do we help our companies and nonprofits that could hire them to understand the value of our global talent, both STEM and non-STEM, that can be part of our future communities and workforces. What are you seeing with the students you're talking with there about exploring their options, either returning home, looking elsewhere for opportunities, staying in Arizona? How are you seeing them thinking about this right now?
Yeah, this is absolutely something that is on the forefront of students' minds, and also, as we know, varies significantly from student to student. So, as far as what students want, a lot of the students that I talk to, they're studying here in the US because they are hoping to spend longer time in the US after graduating. That's not the case for 100% of the students that we have here, but
Right.
that is a common refrain. So, there are some who might return home, but a lot of them are trying to get OPT. At the same time, I also interact with a lot of our alumni. I run our alumni newsletter. I do the publication for our international alumni. And so the ones that I'm seeing who are quote unquote like returning home, I mean, they're looking at that because that might have been a goal in the first place, whether they're going back home and they have a faculty position now, or they've got a government finance position. And so
Right.
sometimes I think people have this goal that, like, I want to stay in the US afterwards. And if they don't do that, then that's in some ways a failure because that wasn't their goal. But I also want to reframe that some people are going back home quite successfully. So there is that opportunity for success. On the other hand, yeah, I do know students who are graduating and are getting positions in the US. And and are, finding that they're finding OPT locations and they're doing that. My concern with students is that I want students to think wider thoughts. And so when I talk with students, I teach a couple classes for new international students. A lot of what I hear is, man, I want to end up in California. But there's a lot of jobs and a lot of amazing USA that is not California. Okay. So for me, my worry with students is that they're looking too narrowly and that, they're not building connections outside of a particular favorite region, and they need to kind of open up their minds for everything that can be offered throughout the country for, job opportunities after they graduate. So that's kind of something that I'm seeing right now. I hope that answered everything you're looking
Yeah. How do you open their mind to these wider opportunities? How do you help them
for. Yeah.
see that the United States has so many different regions and areas that could be attractive? How do you do that?
So, great question. So, one of the things that I do here is that I am an instructor for a course called EGR 599. And what this course is, it is a required course for all new international master students who are studying computer science, information technology, electrical engineering, or informatics. This course is something that was made required by our School of Informatics and Cyber Systems. And really to help this transition of international students into the American master's kind of program. And so we've got different sections about, things like academic integrity and health and all of that. But what we're also doing is a series of professional development sessions in the class that are taught by faculty or staff within our school there. One of the ones that we have is about like networking and job searching. And so we had a faculty member come in and talk about, look, if you're looking at this region, this is all the computer science positions. But if you're looking at the US as a whole, look at how much there is. Okay. And they went through a whole professional development session in my class, which is about 2.5 hours, about how to search for positions by region and looking at different city centers and around the US and city capitals and being able to search and not just relying on Indeed or, LinkedIn for jobs, and how much there is out there once you look beyond these general searches to really kind of open students' minds for these opportunities. And I want them to be thinking about this now. So I know that some students, they come here and they're like, I want to get a good job. I'm here for a degree. I want my education, but I want to have a career. But they might not actually start the career prep until their final semester. And I want them doing that day one.
That's something.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book that I wrote, Welcome to the USA, You're Hired, a guide for foreign-born people seeking jobs, has a chapter on international students and the idea that you need to start early and you need to start making relationships and opening your thinking way earlier, because it's so hard if the student is in the last few months and all of a sudden they need to ramp it up. But it takes a long time to build those relationships. Another area that I always encourage is to follow the alumni network, because I'm sure there's a lot that are in these other cities that are going to be more open than the general public.
And this is one of those things, I don't get this request enough from students. I am the keeper of all of our international alumni data. I had a student last year who was like, I'm an electrical engineering major and I want advice about electrical engineering. Are there any alumni I could talk to? I just go into my database and I look up all of our international electrical engineering alum, and I just put out a message saying, hey, I've got a current student at NAU who wants to talk to an alum and ask questions of an alum. Is anybody willing to talk? I immediately got a response back and connected the two of them. People are absolutely willing to help. If you want to look for hope and optimism, people love helping international students, okay? Whether it's alums or staff, people love helping, but sometimes they need to be asked. So please ask.
Dania, what are you hearing about that?
I have a question from Dylan about that. Is that Dylan students, the Indonesian students, many of them comes with a lot of implicit biases within them, and they have some stereotypes also. Like that, that is the reason that they want to end up being in California, or maybe they have this idea of a good life that okay, if we are going to New York or Washington DC or maybe Texas or maybe again Arizona, those are the big things. But when it comes to the small, not very much recognized states, how do you think that as a part of a university, you can help international students grow in terms of the stereotypes they are holding and implicit biases that they have.
I mean, that's an ongoing issue. And I think that you're spot on with that. How are they going to be interested in going to, Nebraska or Oklahoma or South Dakota or Kentucky or, Nevada if they've never been to these places? Is a fair concern, but I think for them they need to be doing some research on these things. Just like you'd research jobs, I think you should research locations and geography and also research cost of living. I think that there might be some really good jobs where students could be living much more comfortably, probably in Iowa, than they could be if they were in California. And they might be surprised at the quality of living that they could have in some of the flyover country, as we say, in the US, than just being in a part that they have idealized in their mind. I think, a lot of times students come to the US and, we've got that idea that the streets are paved with gold, in some things. And then some things surprise them. Some things surprise them that, like, wow, I thought I would not like this, and I actually did like this, or I thought I would really enjoy being here, and it wasn't what I had that preconceived notion of. So to me, I think students should absolutely research things as much as possible, including, the financial aspects of things too, to get a better understanding of what their options are.
I'd like to move to a new topic about how the universities and employers are going to be adapting to change. Now I'm doing more work with an organization called Future Good, which is really about future thinking and how to plan for the futures. We know that the continent of Africa has the youngest population, will be growing, and is going to be a very rich source of talent, even more in the future than it is today. And certainly in St. Louis, I know that our World Trade Center and our universities are making more visits to different countries in Africa, looking at their student populations and thinking about what they may need to do to both attract and modify programming. So, what are you seeing about your institution responding to the growth of some of the underrepresented populations today, including the African continent, to see as a future pipeline for international students?
Yeah. So we definitely are doing some things in the recruitment space, going to other places. It's not just India, not just China. I am a person individually that I'm mainly working here on the campus. I'm not really going out and doing the recruitment, but I'm working with the people who are doing that. And we are definitely trying to cast a wide net and bring in diverse talent. Now, you have to look at this also from the student's point of view about, well, if I'm going to go to this place, what is there for me there? And so for us, one of the things that we're doing here is a lot of my work is supporting the students and student organizations that we have here. So when you're talking about Africa, we have a really strong African Students Association here at Northern Arizona University that I've been able to collaborate with for years. And so that might be we're providing space in my International Pavilion Event Center for them to host events, or that might mean financially supporting some of their initiatives, for supporting some of their events, or things of that nature, because a lot of the times a student might be interested in NAU, but they're probably going to contact the African Students Association to
Yeah.
actually get questions answered too. So how are we supporting those groups, whether it's the African students, whether it's our Indian group, whether it's our Chinese students, or just our international club in general? These are all organizations that students might contact before they decide to come here. I really want to support them, prior to that, and through forming these really incredibly important social links, because I want every student when they come here to get plugged into a social group that can be that support system. So when we're talking about that, there's the club aspect of that, but not everybody's going to have that. So another thing that we do, and I'm going to focus on the undergraduate side here, is I talked about EGR 599 for our master students, but all new international undergraduate degree seeking students are required to take a class called CIE 100. This is a class that I teach. We've got an in-person section and multiple online sections, and I'm in charge of the curriculum on this too. And this is a 7.5-week, one credit course to help them get acclimated to the American university system and NAU in general. I really want to put in my most quote unquote high risk students into the in person section, ones who they might be the only one or a couple ones from their country there, so that they can really have in person support. And being in this class, they're able to make connections with other students in the class and build a social system there. And then my assignments are things that are making them build connections outside of the class. They have to go to NAU events or Flagstaff community events, take a picture of themselves there, experience community. They have to interview an American student as one of their assignments. So they have to meet people, get out and form connections and comfort in the community. One example that I have from this is last semester, I had 2 refugee students from Somalia in the class. And these students, they needed a lot of support because they're learning a new system. They need a lot of other support being refugees. And being in this class, I got to see them blossom through 7.5 weeks where they felt more comfortable being on campus, being in the USA, and made connections with other students in the class who were from different countries and cultures where they felt like they belonged. And so, whether this is in class or out of class support, I want students to have peer connections and staff connections. I want all of it. Okay. I'm gonna have my cake and eat it too person. Okay. So I want that all for our students to have that kind of support.
Well, I think that course sounds like a wonderful way for that connection to happen, and that sense that they're pushed to make those, in real life connections and feel that they can become truly a part of your broader community and not be isolated. I think that's a great idea. Even others in your campus community see that as something very valuable. Dania, what have you seen with that ability to change and be more connected to supporting belonging in the broader community?
I mean, nowadays, whatever is going on, I have noticed a lot. One process growing up in our community these days that I don't know, there you have heard about her or not. She is an expert in self compassion. Her name is Christine Neff, and she came up with this idea of compassion. That compassion can happen in 3 ways. It can happen either in kindness, like self kindness, and then you have a mindfulness piece attached to it. But one thing that I'm noticing right now is the common humanity or shared humanity component, that in this time of chaos where I'm not the only one who is facing those things as compared to what my fellow international students are experiencing. So, with this sense of common humanity, that this is not only my problem, it is our problem. So, this itself has cultivated a lot of sense of belongingness, and I felt more attached as compared to the attachment that I had before, because now we have, just like what Dylan was mentioning, that there are different support system or different support talks or sessions that our university has initiated, like University of Nebraska has initiated, and we have that option to sit together and discuss all those things openly and vent out our emotions. I feel like that is something that we can, if we can look at, that this crisis or this time of chaos itself has a lot of positivity, other than like, if we can not focus on the negative aspect, yes, it has a lot of positivity, because there is that growth attached into it in terms of belongingness and developing that sense of connectedness people with international people. And also, the best thing that I have noticed here is that now I have a lot of American friends, national friends, who came to me, and then I have received a lot of emails from them and their support to me. So this is something that has been a phenomenal thing that happened with me here. And I have heard it from many international students who have shared that the level of support they're receiving now, it was not the way it was before.
No, I think that's an interesting view because I think a lot of the US born students and people in the communities have been somewhat shocked to watch this increased amount of fear that's now being provoked in a way that, it just didn't reach people's sensitivities before, but now all of a sudden they are somewhat shocked at what they're hearing and reading and seeing in the news that may make them reach out to your point and have more compassion and say, what does this mean for you? And, we want you here. And so I think that could be an odd turn that it's going to potentially make those US born community members feel more need to reach out and be supportive to the international community.
Oh, yeah, you are right. Because one of the things that we as international students have, and many other students I have talked with, they have experienced that there is a distance between international students and US born students. And now at this time, they are extending their support to us and they're giving us that space where we can sit together and we can talk. And that is the wonderful thing that I guess is the need of time.
That's sometimes troubling times can bring out a higher moral feeling from people. And that's, something that's worth the optimism for us to think about. Another topic I wanted to bring up is preparing for the future. So we know that the international students are preparing for the future, but also the institutions themselves, our universities, are having to think about their enrollment. They're having to think about scenarios of what happens if certain countries now have different issues. Again, consular opportunities, the will of international students to come to this country. So I guess the question, Dylan, to you would be, what changes do you think that the institutions are going to need to make to better support the international students that they want and need to come because they need their talent, they need them to pay tuition, they need them to be a part of the community, because if they're not here, there are some dramatic implications for the institutions. So what do you think the institutions need to be thinking about?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. There are a few things that I think institutions need to be doing, and they need to really understand um, the needs and behaviors of their students, because people say international students, but they're not one group. Okay. And so my master's students from India have very different interests and desires than my undergraduate students from China. And so looking at this in the different communities that you have first is very important. I'll give some concrete examples of some things that I'm seeing that I think universities need to be flexible on. First is my bias. I'm coming from a housing background before the international side of things. Is I think we need to change some of the ways that we do housing, especially for on-campus housing for students. Is that I happen to live in a community that has a very high cost of living. And so a lot of our students are looking to live off campus in apartments where they can live more cheaply with other students, where they're not paying by bed, they're paying by apartment. Yet on campus, it is only by bed apartment styles. And so I do think that universities might need to look at what our international students' needs are and change the housing style, or set some community aside separately for students that maybe are pay by apartment and not pay by bed, so that they are going to be more welcoming to international students' price points and sensibilities.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And that doesn't have to be the entire housing, but I do think that's something that housing might need to change. Another thing is recognizing that not all of our international students are on the same timeline as we are in America, and being sensitive to that and setting some housing aside for that. Here, reapplication for housing for the next year starts in fall. But a lot of our international students are not making their decisions to be able to come here until March at the earliest, and really more likely April, in May. And then we're even talking about master students who are waiting on um, you know admittance decisions from their departments. To go to the academic side, I do believe that grad schools need to be quicker about admitting international students and being more clear about what financial aid, if any, that they can give them, and doing that earlier in the process. On the other hand, I do believe that student services and housing need to be mindful of this population is incredibly important, and they are not going to fit into our timelines. We may need to accommodate them in their timelines, whether that's setting housing aside or doing something else in that manner, to be able to have opportunities for students to live on campus, develop that sense of belonging in an even greater way, and so that they can be supported even more. Another thing that is going to be a pet peeve of mine is that we know that students, whether they're from the US or from other countries, sometimes emergencies arise while they're here. And I think that campuses are doing a better job about getting emergency support for students, or maybe a campus pantry, things of that nature. But I do still see that there are issues getting emergency funds to international students in a way that there might not be a difficulty for domestic students. And so I think that universities need to get over that hurdle and make some of this emergency assistance more available to international students as well, so that they are fully included in campus support.
I would also add that one of our universities has been talking about the fall start dates, and that they're having to have two start dates because issues of delays of visas and counselors to get students on campus versus the earlier start date.
Yes.
You bring up some great points. I had not thought about the housing issues, but I think that that's a very interesting thing to think about. And as these schools need to be more responsive to attract and then retain those international students that are so valuable. I do want to end up asking a question about, what advice you give to both the students and their supporters to stay hopeful. How do they stay hopeful right now in these times? What final advice would you have about that sense of hope that we all need to have?
Yeah. So I would say that students and supporters, first off, students, remember that you have supporters. Okay. You're not by yourself, you're not on your own. So that advice about having these personal connections, I think, is incredibly important to find hope and optimism in each other. And then supporters, I say, also stay vigilant and stay working. I think, that Dania said this earlier, some of these things we believe will pass. It might not be immediate. And so you need to have patience and resilience and not be on an island and work together. And I really encourage this concept of work, in that sometimes we're not just hunkering down and waiting for things to blow over. We need to be working together and working to positive solutions to make these things happen. For me, hope and optimism comes out of a lot of me doing things myself and having an impact in that work, where then I feel more hopeful after making a difference, if that makes any sense.
It does. Dania, I'm going to turn it to you.
Okay, so Dylan, we have sent this invitation to a lot of international students, and we have asked them if they have any questions to ask from you. And we have received amazing questions. But one of the questions that we have received from one of the students that I want to ask from you is that as an international student preparing to graduate into a highly competitive job market, the uncertainty around work visas, sponsorship, and immigration policies creates a constant undercurrent of stress. What strategies would you recommend to stay hopeful and practically prepared when opportunities are limited by factors outside of our control, especially when qualified candidates are often overlooked simply due to their visa status?
This is a great question, and I really like that the asker used the phrase practically prepared. How do we be hopeful and practically prepared? And that's kind of what I want to focus on. Betsy said this earlier. You need to build relationships, okay? Not just in your final semester. I want people to be building relationships now, because that is in your control. We talked about people are often overlooked due to their visa status, but in a scenario where you apply for a position and the people have no idea who you are beforehand, then that visa status might be a hurdle. However, if you've been building a relationship with a company, whether it's through LinkedIn or interacting at conferences or in other ways over, a period of months since you've been here, then that hurdle may not exist anymore, because you've built a relationship and they'd say, yeah, we are willing to sponsor for a visa and work with somebody. So to be practically prepared is to do networking and to build relationships and do that research. So, whether I talked earlier about not just focusing on one region or idea there, but I want to ask you, if you're listening, as a student, what kind of professional organizations should you be a part of where you can interact with other people who might be hiring? What connections do your faculty have who you can ask them questions and advice about, well, where should I be going to find something? Who should I be talking to? Third, are you networking with people over LinkedIn who have shared interest? with you who might be hiring. Are you following companies? And I'm not just talking about big things like Google, Facebook, but there are regional employers all over the country. A lot of my students who are getting positions, they're not just ending up at Google or Facebook, but they're finding excellent engineering jobs in Washington and other places because they were able to do this networking and build those relationships. So I want students to interact with people, not just job applications. Okay. So build those connections in your field now. I can tell you, as somebody, if a student contacted me through LinkedIn, they don't have to be an NAU student. It's like, hey, I want to learn more about what you're doing. Can I talk to you about it? I would love to take time for that person. Okay. And I've done that before. I love getting these contacts from people, and they're not just asking me for a job, day one, but they are looking to learn from me. And a lot of times people will be willing to take that time to talk to you. So that is within your control. This practical preparation is in your control, and I would suggest to do it now to build those relationships with people day one.
That is so good, Dylan. And you know me, I'm a big fan of advocating international students to network and build relationship. And, right now I'm also creating the program ICEP Academy, and would love to reconnect and feature your work at NAU, because what you have shared with us today, it is like the best practice for so many colleges and universities around the US. What a
Thank you.
wonderful, yeah, definitely. All the new initiatives that you have created in the past few years is really amazing. What a wonderful holistic picture of how to support international students, increase retention, and enhance a sense of belonging. So, we learned so much from you today, but want you to leave just one last word of advice to both international students and people who support them. Could you please share with us?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. Invest in relationships. And I mean that personally and professionally. I know a lot of people talk about, caring about the job, and there's that stress there too. Don't just focus on that, although networking is important. Focus on your personal relationships who are going to help you get through hard times. I encourage you to have relationships that are near to you and far to you. I love when I hear from students who are talking with their families regularly, because those are incredible sources of support. I encourage our students to find ways to connect locally where they're at, especially if there's like a local club or interest that they can have personal relationships and build that sense of support where they are. These are incredibly important to maintain your hope and optimism and positive outlook. And then getting back to the professional, forge relationships now. And it might be uncomfortable. You might have to get out of your comfort zone, but talk to people, ask for advice, build that network. Even if you're not traveling to meet people in person, do it online and build those relationships. I can tell you later on after this podcast today, I've got a Zoom meeting with other Fulbright alumni who are in India with me. And we've been able to
Wow.
maintain that relationship even since we traveled there in 2023, because that's important to us. And this is really a source of support, probably professionally and personally for us, even, from 2 years out. And so this is something that if you put the time into it, you will get the rewards out of it. And so remember also, people enjoy helping others, and connection makes us more hopeful. So maintain those connections. Don't just wait for other people to connect with you. Be the instigator of connection together with others.
Wonderfully put. With job application, there's always a hurdle of immigrations, right? But networking with people, it doesn't require work authorization or US citizenship. Go ahead, do it. And the early, the better. Thank you so much. And now I would love to turn the stage to Dania, with your background in mindfulness and self compassion and your lived experience as an international student. Do you have a simple resource or practice for us and our listeners can take with them to stay grounded with hope?
Yeah, there is one practice that I personally do a lot in my daily life. Especially, I do it during when I woke up or wake up, or maybe before starting any lecture, or maybe doing any kind of presentation or any stressful thing, because this practice has the power to calm your body. This is called Nadi Shodhana or Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. These are Sanskrit words, and nadi means subtle energy channels or pathways in the body. Shodhana means purifying or cleansing, and pranayama, it refers to the breath control practice in yoga. Overall, in English, it is called alternate nostril breathing. It's a breathing technique that is designed to purify or cleanse the energy channels in the body. So, what we usually do is that we take our right hand and we put our thumb on the nose and we put our middle finger on the other side of the nose. So, for instance, if you try, what you can do is that take your right hand and put your right thumb on your right side of the nose, and then you take your ring finger or middle finger, whatever is convenient for you, and put that middle finger on your left side of the nose. In alternate nostril breathing, what we usually do is that we breathe in from one side of the nose, we hold our breath for a few seconds, and then we close that side and breathe out from the other side of the nose. So let's for a while that if you can take your hand, put it on your nose and block that side. Breathe in from the left side of the nose. Take a little bit of pause, hold it for a while, and then close that left side of the nose and breathe out from the right side of the nose. Breathe in from right side of the nose. Hold, block the right side, and breathe out from the left side of the nose. Again, breathe in from the left side of the nose. Block the left side now, and breathe out from the right side of the nose. So this is just doing it for 2 to 3 minutes has an immense power to calm your nervous system. So I personally practice, but we have research evidences that says that alternate nostril breathing has immense power to manage our emotions, to manage our stress system, because usually it controls both our left and right hemispheres of the brain. And when we breathe in from one side of the nose and breathe and take a pause and breathe out from the other side of the nose, it usually helps us to deepen our breath. So when we deepen our breath, then all of the air and oxygen got enough time to go to different parts in the brain. So what usually happens is that when we feel stressed or anxious, or our breath become a little bit shallow. We cannot have a deep breath. So with this practice, we are training our breathing to have a depthness into it, and with that depthness, it goes into our brain and central nervous system to relax ourselves, and then our body feel more relaxed, more calm, and more in a peaceful state.
I think that's very interesting, Dania, because I think the fact that you're using your hand to do something is different than certain other meditations that are just mental. So I think your point about left and right brain and what it does is very interesting. And I do look forward to experimenting with that and seeing if it helps me have some mindfulness as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for that.
If you go to just search on Google or maybe on YouTube, there are so many exercises, description and short videos that can help you go through how you can do alternate nostril breathing, the benefits of alternate nostril breathing that you can watch to make it a part of your daily routine.
When did you start learning this technique?
So I started learning it around like 2 years ago. When I came to United States, I personally, it was like my cultural shock period. And while dealing with all those things, mindfulness is something that I got hooked up with, and I felt like this is my savior. So I started practicing different meditations. But since my background is from South Asia, I referred back to many Eastern based practices. So I started connecting with different forums that are based in India. So right now I have a lot of my connection or also like my gurus or my mentors who are based in India, and also they're based here in United States, and they're helping me to grow with a lot of mindfulness and meditation based activities and practices.
Well, I think that's wonderful. And I think when people start being agitated about the current environment, it gets people riled up. And I think that this is a great idea to try for something that calms us back so that we can get back to our roots of optimism and hope. Based on that, though, I do want to just thank you, Dania, for that practice. And then I also particularly want to thank our guest, Dylan, for these terrific insights. And I've learned a lot about your program and ideas you have that would be very valuable to everyone who is listening. We're very grateful that we are building this community together. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
I don't know about you all, but I am hopeful and optimistic already. This is such a great collective energy to support each other. In the next episode, we will be joined by Fiona McEntee, author, advocate, and expert on startup visas and green card strategies. So you will not want to miss this. And make sure to subscribe at ICAway.com/subscribe. I will put the link in the caption below and follow us with hashtag ICAway Coaching. Thank you so much, my amazing co-host Betsy Dania, for being such a wonderful team here. And until next time, everyone, take care and stay hopeful.